The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in the neutral space station of Haven Prime, a massive structure that had served as the center of interstellar diplomacy for over 1,000 years. Representatives from 47 different species gathered in the great amphitheater, their various forms creating a living rainbow of galactic diversity. Elder Counselor Vorthak of the ancient ethereal collective called the session to order. His species had been mediating galactic conflicts since before most civilizations had achieved spaceflight, and his experience showed in the gravity of his opening statement. We are here to address the situation in Sector 7739, where the Zephyrian hegemony initiated hostile action against the human species 6 months ago. His translated voice echoed through the chamber. Recent reports indicate that this conflict has reached a conclusion that requires immediate diplomatic intervention. Murmurs rippled through the assembled delegates. Everyone had heard fragments of what had occurred, but the full scope of the conflict remained unclear. The Zephyrians had maintained strict communications blackout since their massive fleet had been destroyed at the human homeworld. The first speaker was Sub-Admiral Christel, one of the few surviving Zephyrian commanders. Her crystalline form flickered with patterns that the translators interpreted as deep exhaustion and something approaching despair. Honored delegates, she began, her voice carrying none of the arrogance that had characterized Zephyrian communications for centuries. I come before you to report the complete military defeat of the hegemony forces. Our fleets have been destroyed. Our worlds are under human occupation and our civilian population faces immediate humanitarian crisis. The chamber fell silent. The Zephyrian hegemony had been one of the galaxy's major powers for 2 millennia. The idea that they could be defeated by a species that had only achieved spaceflight within the last century seemed impossible. Perhaps you could provide more specific details, suggested the Kalari delegate, his gas form shifting with curiosity. Our intelligence indicates that humans possessed fewer than 300 vessels at the conflict's beginning. How could such a small force defeat the hegemony's military? Christel's form darkened to almost black. The humans do not fight as other species fight. They do not respect conventional military doctrine. They do not follow accepted rules of engagement. They treat warfare as if it were entertainment. Before she could continue, a new voice filled the chamber, clean, confident, and speaking in perfectly translated galactic standard. With respect, Sub-Admiral, we treat warfare as a science. The entertainment aspect is just a bonus. Every head in the chamber turned to see the source of the interruption. A human woman stood at the chamber's entrance, her simple blue uniform bearing insignia that none of the delegates recognized. She walked with the easy confidence of someone comfortable in her own skin, seemingly unbothered by the attention of the galaxy's most powerful beings. Elder Counselor Vorthak consulted his records quickly. I was not aware that humanity had been granted diplomatic status with the Council. The human smiled. We haven't. I'm Ambassador Sarah Chen, and I'm here to apply for membership. I should mention that this application comes with some rather urgent matters that require immediate attention. As Chen took her place at the speaking podium, delegates throughout the chamber activated their personal translators and recording devices. First contact with a new species was always significant, but first contact with a species that had just defeated a major galactic power was unprecedented. 6 months ago, the Zephyrian hegemony attacked human civilian targets without provocation, Chen began, her voice carrying across the chamber with practiced authority. They demanded our surrender and submission to their authority. When we declined, they escalated to biological warfare targeting our food supply. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Biological warfare against agricultural targets was considered one of the most serious war crimes in galactic law. In response, Chen continued, humanity implemented comprehensive military action designed to end the conflict as quickly as possible, while minimizing long-term damage to both civilizations. I'm here to report that these objectives have been achieved. The Thorian ambassador, his insectoid form clicking with agitation, interrupted. Our intelligence suggests that human forces have occupied dozens of Zephyrian worlds. This goes far beyond defensive action. Chen nodded calmly. You're absolutely correct. Human forces currently maintain administrative control over 43 former hegemony worlds. However, I think you'll find our occupation somewhat different from what you might expect. She activated a holographic display that filled the center of the chamber. The images showed Zephyrian worlds, but not the devastation that typically followed military conquest. Instead, the delegates saw construction projects, medical facilities, and what appeared to be infrastructure improvement. Human engineering teams are currently rebuilding the agricultural centers that were damaged during the conflict, Chen explained. Our medical corps is treating Zephyrian civilians affected by the food shortages. Our educators are working with local populations to establish new governance structures. Elder Counselor Vorthak studied the displays with growing confusion. Ambassador Chen, these appear to be reconstruction efforts rather than occupation activities. Could you clarify the human objectives in this matter? Chen's smile grew slightly wider. Of course. Our objective is to ensure that this type of conflict never occurs again. The most effective way to accomplish that goal is to help former hegemony worlds develop stable, peaceful governments that understand the benefits of cooperation over conquest. The chamber erupted in confused discussion as delegates tried to process this unprecedented approach to post-war diplomacy. The Ethereal Collective's representative called for order several times before the noise subsided. Sub-Admiral Christel found her voice first. The humans claim to be helping our people, but they have systematically dismantled our entire civilization. Our military is gone, our government structure has been dissolved, and our territorial authority has been eliminated. That's true, Chen acknowledged without any apparent shame. Your civilization was based on the conquest and subjugation of other species. We couldn't allow that to continue. However, we've been very careful to preserve Zephyrian culture, art, science, and philosophy. We're just not allowing you to use those achievements as tools for oppressing others. The Kalari delegate raised what passed for a hand among his species. Ambassador Chen, what assurance do we have that humanity will not simply replace the hegemony as a conquering power? Your military capabilities appear to be substantial. Chen paused, and for the first time since entering the chamber, her expression grew serious. That's an excellent question, and I understand your concern. Let me be completely honest with you about human capabilities and intentions, she gestured, and the holographic display changed to show star charts marking human territory, Zephyrian space, and the locations of various other civilizations. During our conflict with the hegemony, human forces conducted comprehensive intelligence gathering on every major civilization within 500 light-years of our space. We now possess detailed information on your military capabilities, economic structures, and political systems. The chamber fell deadly silent as the implications sank in. If humanity had been mapping other civilizations during their war with the Zephyrians, they were already prepared for a much larger conflict. We know which species could threaten us, Chen continued, which ones could be useful allies, and which ones are too weak to matter strategically. We understand your supply lines, your defensive capabilities, and your potential for military expansion. Several delegates began activating emergency communication devices, preparing to warn their home governments about this new threat. Chen waited patiently for them to finish before continuing. However, she said, and something in her tone made everyone stop what they were doing, we're not interested in conquest. Conquest is expensive, time-consuming, and ultimately counterproductive. We much prefer trade cooperation and mutual defense agreements. The Thorian ambassador's mandibles clicked skeptically. If that is true, why gather such extensive intelligence on potential enemies? Chen's smile returned, but it carried a harder edge. Because we learned an important lesson from our encounter with the Zephyrians. The galaxy contains species that view peaceful expansion as weakness and diplomacy as an invitation to attack. We will never again be caught unprepared for that kind of aggression. She gestured once more, and the display showed human ships patrolling the borders of former hegemony space. But instead of battle formations, they flew in medical and reconstruction configurations. Here's what we're offering the galaxy, Chen announced. Partnership with humanity provides access to our technology, our trade networks, and our protection from aggressive neighbors. We're particularly interested in species that value scientific advancement, cultural exchange, and peaceful coexistence. The elder counselor leaned forward with obvious interest. And what would humanity require in return for such partnership? Mutual respect, fair trade agreements, and a commitment to peaceful conflict resolution, Chen replied immediately. The massive space station called Nexus Prime floated in the dark void between stars. It was bigger than most cities, with gleaming metal towers and spinning rings that created artificial gravity. This was where the Galactic Council met every 3 months to discuss important matters across their vast territory. Inside the Great Meeting Hall, representatives from 12 different alien species sat in their special chairs. Each chair was designed for their unique bodies. The Draconians, with their thick scales and powerful claws, sat on heated stone platforms. The Etherians, who looked like living clouds of light, floated in energy containers. The crystalline beings chimed softly as they vibrated their glass-like bodies to communicate. Council Prime Zexhi, the leader of the Draconians, called the meeting to order. His deep voice echoed through the chamber, as translation devices turned his words into hundreds of different languages. Today we discuss trade routes through the Spiral Arm, mining rights on Kepler 438b, and territorial disputes in the Outer Rim. The meeting went smoothly for hours. Representatives argued about shipping costs and border patrols. The Verdani delegation, plant-like beings who moved slowly, complained about pirates attacking their seed ships. The Synthetic Collective, artificial intelligences in robot bodies, calculated new tax rates with perfect precision. Everything was normal, until archivist Veltar raised one of his glowing appendages. Veltar was very old even for an Etherian. His species could live for thousands of years, and he was one of the oldest beings in the galaxy. His light flickered weakly, like a candle in the wind. Council members, Veltar said, his voice shaking through the translation system. I must speak about something important. Something we have ignored for too long. The chamber grew quiet. When Veltar spoke, everyone listened. He had been alive during the Great Wars, the first contact with hostile species, and the founding of the Council itself. I speak of Sector 7 Alpha, Veltar continued, the place we call the Isolation Zone. Many representatives looked confused. Some had never heard this term before. Council Prime Zexhi frowned, his yellow eyes narrowing. Archivist, that sector has been empty for 300 years. Why do you bring up ancient history? Veltar's light grew brighter with distress. Because it is not empty, Prime. And it was never meant to be permanent. The crystalline delegate called Resonance of Truth chimed a question. What was isolated there? We have no records of this zone. That is because the records were classified, Veltar replied. Hidden away so that future generations would not make the same mistakes we did. Admiral Krell of the Hegemony Fleet leaned forward in his chair. He was a warrior race, bred for battle, and he did not like mysteries. Speak plainly, old one. What threatens us? Veltar's form shimmered as he accessed memories thousands of years old. There was a species contained within that zone. They called themselves humans. My ancestors' records describe them as the most dangerous beings ever encountered. The chamber erupted in whispers and electronic chatter. Species throughout the galaxy had legends of the Great Isolation, but most thought it was just a story. Dangerous how? Asked the representative from the Spiral Union, a nervous species that looked like giant insects. They were violent beyond measure, Veltar explained. But that was not the worst part. They adapted to everything. Every weapon used against them they learned to counter. Every disease that should have killed them, they survived. Every limitation placed on them they found ways to overcome. Council Prime Zexhi waved a clawed hand dismissively. Even if this is true, they are surely dead by now. No species can survive 3 centuries of isolation. That is what we hoped, Veltar said quietly. But the barrier we built around their solar system has been weakening. Our deep space monitoring stations have detected strange signals coming from within the zone. What kind of signals? Admiral Krell demanded. Technological signatures that should not exist. Energy readings beyond what any known civilization can produce. And something else. Veltar paused, his light dimming with fear. The signals are getting stronger. The Synthetic Collective's representative, Node 7, processed this information with computer-like speed. Probability assessment. If these humans survived isolation, they would have had 3 centuries to develop without outside interference. This could result in exponential technological advancement. Exactly, Veltar agreed. We gave them the greatest gift possible, necessity. Every challenge they faced, they had to overcome alone. The plant-like Verdani delegate swayed nervously. But surely they would be grateful if we contacted them. 300 years is a long time to be alone. Veltar's laugh was like static electricity. Grateful? We imprisoned them because we feared them. We left them to die because we thought they were too dangerous to live. Do you think they will thank us for this? Admiral Krell stood up, his massive frame casting shadows across the chamber. If they are truly a threat, we should strike first. Before they grow stronger. Strike with what? Veltar asked. The barrier around their system was built with the combined technology of 50 species. It was meant to last forever. If they have found a way to weaken it from inside, what do you think they have done to everything else? The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Every species had their own stories of human encounters from the ancient times. The Draconians spoke of human warriors who fought with impossible courage. The Etherians remembered human scientists who solved problems that had puzzled them for centuries. The crystalline beings had records of human artists who created beauty from destruction. What do our current monitoring stations tell us? Asked Resonance of Truth. Veltar accessed the classified files with his ancient security clearance. 3 days ago, Station Delta 7 detected massive energy signatures moving within the isolation zone. Whatever the humans are building, it is big, and it is almost complete. Building what? Several delegates asked at once. Ships, Veltar replied simply. Very big ships. The silence that followed was broken only by the humming of the station's life support systems. Each representative was thinking the same thing. What had they created by abandoning the humans to their fate? Council Prime Zexai finally spoke. What do you recommend, Archivist? I recommend prayer, Veltar said seriously. Because if the humans decide to leave their isolation zone, there is nothing in this galaxy that can stop them. As if summoned by his words, a communication officer rushed into the chamber. She was a young Draconian barely past her first molting. Her scales were pale with fear. Council Prime, she said, her voice shaking. We are receiving a transmission from Sector 7 Alpha. Every representative froze. After 300 years of silence, something was finally coming from the isolation zone. What does it say? Zexai asked quietly. The communication officer looked at her data pad with trembling claws. It says, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earthship Endeavor. We come seeking diplomatic contact with the Galactic Council. The chamber erupted in chaos. Some delegates screamed. Others activated emergency protocols. The synthetic collective began calculating odds of survival while the Etherians flickered with panic. But Veltar remained calm, his ancient light steady and resigned. After 3 centuries of wondering, the answer was finally coming to them. The humans were free. The docking bay of Nexus Prime had never hosted a ship quite like the one that now rested in Bay 94. The human diplomatic vessel was smaller than most council ships, but it seemed to hum with barely contained energy. Station technicians who tried to scan it found their instruments giving impossible readings. Ambassador Elena Vasquez walked through the corridors of the massive space station with confident steps. She was a tall woman with dark hair and kind eyes, wearing a simple blue uniform with no visible weapons. Behind her walked 2 human guards, a man and a woman who moved with the easy grace of people who feared nothing. The council members who watched her approach felt their fears growing with each step. This was what 300 years of isolation had produced. She looked so normal, so human. But after Admiral Krell's report, none of them believed that appearances meant anything when it came to humans. The great assembly hall had been prepared for this historic meeting. Every species in the council was represented, from the massive hegemony delegates to the tiny whisper folk who spoke only in ultrasonic frequencies. Security was everywhere, though everyone understood how useless it would be. Elena entered the hall without ceremony. She looked around at the gathered aliens with interest, as if she was a tourist visiting a museum. When she reached the center of the chamber, she stopped and smiled. Honored members of the Galactic Council, she said in perfect galactic standard, I am Ambassador Elena Vasquez of the United Earth Federation. We come in peace seeking to rejoin the galactic community after our long isolation. Council Prime Zexai stood up slowly. His yellow eyes studied this human woman who looked so harmless but represented such terrifying power. Ambassador, your arrival has caused great concern among our member species. We must discuss the circumstances of your containment. Elena's smile never wavered. Of course, Prime. We understand your concerns. 3 centuries ago, your predecessors decided that humanity was too dangerous to be allowed freedom in the galaxy. They built a barrier around our solar system and left us to die. The chamber was completely silent. Even the constant background hum of the station's system seemed muted. Instead of dying, Elena continued, We thrived. We adapted. We grew. We became something that your ancestors could never have imagined. Archivist Veltar flickered with nervous energy. What have you become? Elena gestured, and the air above her hand shimmered. A holographic display appeared, showing the human solar system, but it was not the system the Council remembered. Every planet was covered with cities. Massive structures floated in space between the worlds. Ships moved in organized streams like rivers of light. We have turned our solar system into the most advanced civilization in this galaxy, Elena said simply. Every planet is inhabited. Every moon is a research station. Every asteroid has been converted into a factory or a farm. The hologram zoomed out, showing dozens of star systems connected by strange energy lines. Of course, one solar system was not enough. We learned to fold space, to travel faster than light in ways you have never seen. We now inhabit 47 star systems within what you call the isolation zone. Council Prime Zexhi's claws scraped against his chair. That's impossible. The barrier prevented faster-than-light travel. The barrier prevented your kind of faster-than-light travel, Elena corrected. So we invented new kinds. We learned to step outside normal space entirely. We discovered how to move through dimensions you don't even know exist. The Synthetic Collective's representative, Node 7, processed this information with growing alarm. What is your current population? Approximately 400 billion humans, Elena replied casually. Plus another 200 billion artificial intelligences we've created as partners and friends. The chamber erupted in shocked whispers. The entire Galactic Council represented barely 50 billion sentient beings across hundreds of worlds. Elena waited for the noise to die down before continuing. You're probably wondering about our technology. Let me show you a few examples. She gestured again and new holograms appeared. We have eliminated aging. Death from disease is now optional. We can grow new bodies, transfer consciousness, even bring back the dead if we recover their remains within a few days. The Verdani delegate swayed in distress. That is impossible. No species has conquered death. We haven't conquered it, Elena said. We've simply made it much less permanent. We've also created true artificial intelligence that is indistinguishable from biological consciousness. We've learned to manipulate matter at the quantum level, to create energy from nothing, to build structures that exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Admiral Krell, who had arrived earlier with his damaged fleet, stood up angrily. You speak of weapons. What weapons do you possess? Elena's expression grew sad. Admiral, we have weapons that could sterilize entire sectors of space. We have ships that could destroy your sun from 1,000 light years away. We have shields that make us completely invulnerable to anything in your current arsenal. She paused, letting that sink in. But do you know what our greatest weapon is? What? Krell asked quietly. Hope, Elena said. 300 years of believing that someday we would rejoin the galactic community. 300 years of preparing for the day when we could share what we've learned. We could have used our technology to break free decades ago. We could have conquered this entire galaxy by now. But we waited. Why? Asked Resonance of Truth. Because we learned something during our isolation that we never knew before. We learned that survival is not enough, that power without purpose is meaningless, that the greatest achievement is not conquering others but helping them. Elena's guard stepped forward, and the council members tensed. But instead of weapons, the humans produced small devices that projected more holograms. We want to share our medical technology with species that suffer from genetic diseases. We want to offer our agricultural advances to worlds facing famine. We want to provide our energy systems to civilizations still burning fossil fuels. The holograms showed miracle cures, impossible machines, technologies that seemed like magic. But, Elena continued, we also want to learn from you. 300 years of isolation taught us much, but it also cut us off from the galaxy's cultural and artistic developments. We have missed 3 centuries of music, literature, philosophy, and discovery. Council Prime Zexhi found his voice. What do you want from us? Membership in the Council, Elena said simply. A voice in galactic affairs. The right to trade and travel freely. The opportunity to contribute to the common good. And if we refuse? Admiral Krell asked. Elena's smile was both warm and terrifying. Then we will continue doing what we have done for 300 years. We will survive. We will grow. We will prepare for the day when you change your minds. She looked around the chamber at all the assembled delegates. But I hope you won't refuse. Because there are threats in this galaxy. that you haven't even discovered yet. Dark things moving in the space between galaxies. Ancient enemies stirring in forgotten corners of reality. And when they come, you will need allies who understand what it means to face impossible odds and win anyway. The chamber fell silent as her words sank in. Elena had just offered them partnership, threatened them with isolation, and warned them of unknown dangers, all in the same breath. "We will need time to consider," Zexai said finally. "Of course," Elena agreed. "Take all the time you need. But remember, we have waited 300 years already. We have learned to be very patient." As she turned to leave, Veltar called out, "Ambassador, why do you still want to join us? After what we did to you?" Elena stopped and looked back at the ancient Etherean. "Because you made a mistake based on fear, not malice. And because 300 years ago we were probably exactly as dangerous as you thought we were. You gave us time to become something better." Her final words echoed through the chamber long after she was gone. "Thank you for that gift. Now let us show you what we have become." The emergency sessions had been going on for 2 weeks without rest. The great assembly hall of Nexus Prime buzzed with activity day and night as council members argued, plotted, and panicked. The arrival of Ambassador Elena Vasquez had split the council into 3 groups, each pulling in different directions. In the military planning room, Admiral Krell paced back and forth like a caged predator. Around him sat the war leaders of every major species. Maps and tactical displays covered every surface, showing fleet positions and weapon capabilities. "We have to strike now," Krell insisted, his scaled hands slamming down on the table. "Every day we wait, they grow stronger. Every moment of delay gives them more time to prepare." General Thrak of the Hegemony nodded his massive head. "The Admiral speaks truth. My analysis shows that if we combine all Council fleets, we might achieve victory, but only if we attack immediately." Commander Steelwing of the Avian Confederacy ruffled her feathers nervously. "What of their demonstration against Admiral Krell's fleet? They disabled 24 warships without destroying them. This suggests they have weapons we cannot counter." "Exactly why we must attack," Krell argued. "They showed mercy because they wanted to negotiate. In a real war, they would not be so gentle." The Synthetic Collective's military unit, Tactical Node 12, processed the data with machine precision. Probability analysis indicates 23.7% chance of Council victory in direct military confrontation. Probability decreases by 1.3% each day we delay. "Then it's decided," Krell said. "We mobilize every ship, every weapon, every soldier. We throw everything at them before they can fully escape their isolation zone." But across the station, in the diplomatic quarters, a very different conversation was taking place. The Verdani ambassador, a tree-like being named Wisdom of Seasons, swayed gently as she addressed the peaceful species of the council. "We must consider the human offer carefully," she said in her slow, thoughtful voice. "They possess technology that could heal our worlds, feed our hungry, and solve problems we have struggled with for centuries." The representative of the Whisper Folk, a tiny being who spoke through a translation device, agreed. "The humans have shown restraint. They could have forced their way into council space, but they chose diplomacy. This suggests they truly seek peace." Resonance of Truth chimed in agreement. "Our analysis of their cultural broadcast during the past week shows a species that values art, music, and learning. They do not appear to be the monsters our ancestors feared." The Etherean delegate, a younger member of Veltar's species named Light of Understanding, flickered with hope. "Perhaps isolation changed them. Perhaps they have learned to be better than they were." But even among the peace faction there were doubts. The Aquatic Federation's representative, a being that lived in a water-filled tank, bubbled nervously. "What if this is deception? What if they appear peaceful only to lower our defenses?" "Then we are already lost," Wisdom of Seasons replied sadly. "If they truly wish us harm, no amount of military preparation will save us. Their technology is beyond our ability to counter." In the third meeting room, the isolationist faction huddled together like frightened children. These were the species whose territory bordered the old isolation zone, who had lived for centuries with the knowledge that something dangerous was locked away nearby. "Rebuild the barrier," pleaded the Spiral Union representative. "Click, click, buzz. Make it stronger this time. Seal them away forever." "With what?" asked the delegate from the Outer Rim colonies. The original barrier required the combined technology of 50 species and took decades to build. "We no longer have some of those technologies. Then we run, suggested the representative of the border worlds. We take our fleets, our people, our entire civilizations and flee to the far side of the galaxy. And leave our homes, our history, everything we have built? The Mineral Rights Consortium delegate scraped his rocky limbs against his chair in distress. That is not survival. That is surrender. As the three factions argued among themselves, intelligence reports continued to flow in that made the situation more desperate by the hour. Spy satellites detected massive construction projects throughout human space. Entire asteroid belts were being converted into something, but the Council's best scientists could not figure out what. The energy signatures were beyond anything in their databases. Long-range sensors picked up human ships moving between star systems at impossible speeds. Not just faster than light travel, but something that seemed to ignore the normal rules of physics entirely. Intercepted human communications when they could be decoded, spoke of Project Exodus and final preparations, and the time of waiting is almost over. Most disturbing of all were the reports from the few brave souls who tried to approach human space. They found the borders of the old isolation zone now patrolled by ships that appeared and disappeared like ghosts, ships that scanned intruders with unknown energy beams and then simply vanished. Council Prime Zexhai called an emergency meeting of the faction leaders. His private conference room was barely big enough for the three groups, and the tension was thick enough to cut with a blade. "We must reach a decision," he announced. "The humans have been patient, but they will not wait forever." Admiral Krell spoke first. "Every hour we delay makes our situation worse. If we're going to fight, it must be now. Fighting will only ensure our destruction," Wisdom of Seasons countered. Their ambassador offered partnership. "We should accept partnership with beings who could destroy us whenever they choose?" Click, click, Buzz buzzed nervously. "That is not partnership. That is slavery." "Then what do you suggest?" Zexhai asked. Before anyone could answer, the conference room's communication system activated. "Council Prime," came the voice of the duty officer. "We have an urgent message from our deep space monitoring stations." "What now?" Zexhai muttered. "Sir, we're detecting massive energy signatures approaching from the galactic rim. Something big is coming. Something that's not human." The faction leaders looked at each other with growing dread. "Show us," Zexhai ordered. The room's main display activated, showing the edge of the galaxy where few ships ever traveled. Space itself seemed to be wrong. Dark shapes moved against the starfield, blotting out light wherever they passed. "What are we looking at?" Admiral Krell asked. The duty officer's voice was tight with fear. "Sir, our best analysis suggests it's a fleet of some kind. Origin unknown. Technology unknown. But the energy readings suggest they're larger than anything we've ever seen." "How large?" Wisdom of Seasons asked. "Sir, the smallest vessels appear to be approximately the size of our largest space stations." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Whatever was coming from the galactic rim made even the feared humans seem small by comparison. "How long until they reach Council space?" Zexhai asked quietly. "At their current speed, approximately 6 months, sir." Admiral Krell stared at the display, watching the dark shapes that seemed to devour starlight itself. "Can our fleet stop them?" "Sir," the duty officer replied, "preliminary analysis suggests that our combined military forces would have less than a 10% chance of victory against this fleet." The faction leaders looked at each other with new understanding. Their argument about the humans suddenly seemed much less important. "Has Ambassador Vasquez been informed of this development?" Zexhai asked. "Yes, sir. She has requested an immediate meeting with Council leadership." "What did she say?" Wisdom of Seasons asked. The duty officer paused.
"Sir, she said to tell you that this is exactly the kind of threat she warned you about."
"And that humanity stands ready to help." As the alien fleet crept closer across the void between galaxies, the Council faced a choice that would determine the fate of their entire civilization. Trust the humans they had imprisoned and feared for 3 centuries, or face annihilation alone. Time was running out, and the galaxy would never be the same. The emergency council session was unlike any in galactic history. Every delegate sat in stunned silence as they watched the tactical displays showing the approaching alien fleet. The dark ships had a name now. Intelligence sources called them the Devourers, because every star system they passed through was left empty and lifeless. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood before the assembled council. no longer the polite diplomat who had arrived weeks ago. Now she looked like what she truly was, a representative of the most advanced civilization in the galaxy, offering to save species who had once tried to destroy her people. The Devourer fleet will reach the outer colonies in 4 months, she announced. Our analysis shows they are not here for conquest or resources. They consume entire civilizations, leaving nothing behind but empty space. Council Prime Zexhi's voice was barely a whisper. How many ships? Approximately 10,000 vessels, ranging from the size of your space stations to something we can only describe as artificial planets. Each one is armed with weapons that can crack worlds and shields that can withstand supernovas. Admiral Krell stood up slowly. The proud warrior looked defeated before the battle had even begun. Our combined fleets number less than 3,000 ships, and none of them are even close to that size. Elena nodded sadly. Yes, we know. We've been monitoring your military capabilities for some time. Against the Devourers, your fleets would last approximately 47 minutes. The chamber erupted in desperate voices. Some delegates wept, others raged. A few simply sat in shocked silence. But, Elena continued, her voice cutting through the chaos, humanity can stop them. The chamber fell silent again. Hope and fear warred on every alien face. What do you want in return? Zexhi asked quietly. Elena's answer was simple. Nothing you would not freely give to any ally. A permanent seat on the council. The right to establish embassies and trade posts. Most importantly, the authority to coordinate galactic defense against future threats. You want to rule us? Click, click, Buzz accused. No, Elena replied firmly. We want to protect you. There's a difference, though I understand why you might not see it that way. She gestured, and the air filled with holographic displays showing human fleets. Ships that seemed to be made of crystallized starlight moved in perfect formation. Weapons that bent reality itself charged with impossible energies. 3 months ago, we detected the Devourer fleet approaching. We have been preparing ever since. Our ships are already in position. The displays showed the edge of council space where dozens of human vessels waited in the void between stars. They were beautiful and terrible, like mechanical angels preparing for war. We will stop the Devourers, Elena promised. But afterward, things change. The galaxy is more dangerous than you know. This is not the first extinction fleet to emerge from the void between galaxies, and it will not be the last. What are you saying? Wisdom of Seasons asked. We are saying that the age of small isolated civilizations is over. From now on, survival requires unity. Cooperation, shared defense. Admiral Krell found his voice. You're talking about conquest by another name. Elena turned to face him directly. Admiral, in 3 days our fleets will engage the Devourers in the Proxima Nebula. You are welcome to send your ships to observe. Judge for yourself whether we fight as conquerors or as protectors. 3 days later, every functional ship in the Council fleet was positioned at a safe distance from the battle zone. What they witnessed would be remembered for millennia. The human fleet materialized from nowhere, simply appearing in space as if stepping through invisible doorways. 50 ships faced 10,000, but they showed no fear. The battle was brief and decisive. Human weapons reached across impossible distances, striking Devourer ships with energies that existed outside normal spacetime. Entire enemy formations vanished into dimensional rifts. Others were trapped in temporal loops, reliving the same moment forever. When Devourer weapons struck human shields, the energy was absorbed and redirected, turning the aliens' own power against them. Human ships moved like living things, dancing between attacks and striking with surgical precision. In less than an hour, the greatest threat the galaxy had ever faced was reduced to scattered wreckage fleeing back toward the galactic rim. Admiral Krell watched from his bridge in stunned silence. He had witnessed warfare beyond his understanding, conducted by beings who fought with the power of gods. All Devourer vessels are retreating, his sensor officer reported. The humans, they won without losing a single ship. When the human fleet returned to Council space, they were greeted not as conquerors but as saviors. The transformation in attitude was complete. Species that had feared humanity now begged for their protection. The formal ceremony took place on Nexus Prime, in the great assembly hall where Elena had first revealed human capabilities. Now she stood before the Council not as a petitioner, but as an equal. The Terran Accords, Council Prime Zexhi announced, establish humanity as a full member of the Galactic Council. with special authority over interstellar defense and security. Elena signed the documents with a simple pen, a gesture that somehow made the moment more meaningful than any advanced technology could have. "We accept this responsibility," she said formally. "And we pledge to use our power not to dominate but to protect, not to conquer but to defend." After the ceremony, archivist Veltar approached Elena privately. The ancient Etherian flickered with curiosity. "Ambassador, may I ask you something?" "Of course, archivist. Do you forgive us? For the isolation? For the fear? For trying to destroy you?" Elena's smile was warm and genuine.
"Veltar, we should thank you." The Etherian's light pulsed with confusion.
"Thank us? 300 years ago, you were right to fear us. We were violent, unpredictable, dangerous. If you had welcomed us into the galactic community then, we might have conquered it eventually." She looked out through the observation windows at the stars beyond. "But isolation forced us to grow, to become better. To learn that strength without wisdom is meaningless. You gave us the greatest gift possible, time to evolve beyond what we were. And now?" Veltar asked. "Now we are what we always had the potential to become, protectors instead of conquerors, guardians instead of destroyers." As if summoned by her words, a young council aide approached nervously. She was from one of the smaller species, barely more than a child by galactic standards. "Ambassador," she said shyly, "what happens now? Now that the Devourers are gone?" Elena knelt down to the aide's level, her expression gentle. "Now we build something better. We share our knowledge to heal the galaxy's wounds. We establish defenses against future threats. We explore new regions of space together." The aide's eyes widened with wonder. "Will you teach us? Your technologies, your sciences?" "We will teach anyone who wishes to learn," Elena promised. "But remember, knowledge without wisdom can be dangerous. We will also teach you why we use our power the way we do." Standing up, Elena addressed the gathering crowd of delegates and aides who had been listening. "The galaxy is vast and full of wonders and dangers. From now on, we face both together." Later, as Elena prepared to return to her ship, Veltar asked one final question. "What comes next for humanity? You have saved us all. You could rule the galaxy if you chose." Elena paused at the airlock, looking back at the ancient being who had first warned the Council about human potential. "Archivist, for 3 centuries we dreamed of rejoining galactic civilization. Now that dream has come true. But we learned something during our isolation that changes everything." "What did you learn?" "We learned that the greatest victory is not conquering your enemies, but turning them into friends. The greatest power is not the ability to destroy, but the will to protect. And the greatest achievement is not ruling others, but inspiring them to become better than they ever thought possible." As the human ship departed Nexus Prime, its engines bending space around it in ways that still amazed Council scientists, a new age began for the galaxy. Humanity had emerged from their isolation zone not as the conquerors the Council had feared, but as the guardians they had never dared to hope for. The stars themselves seemed brighter, as if the galaxy finally had something worth protecting. And in the depths of space, where new threats stirred in the darkness between worlds, potential enemies reconsidered their plans. The galaxy was no longer defenseless, it had humanity watching over it.